So the other day I was talking with my daughter and we were talking about friendships. She's 11, kind of in the thick of that preteen, middle school. I'm sure we all remember it, right? And you've heard me before on the podcast say that midlife for women is really a second adolescence. So it's uncanny sometimes how there's a lot of parallels there with me and my daughter. But anyway, we were talking about friendships. She mentioned to me something about, the friends that she was aware of that I have, and like thinking that they were my best friends, like trying to kind of rank them because that's where she is and hers. And so she's like, well, is this person your best friend, or is it like this, or is it like this? And I had to stop her for a second. And honestly, I had a realization, and it's kind of a spin off what we were talking about in the podcast last week. But I had this realization that I'm not doing friendships well yet in my midlife. I'm working on it. I am in my own therapy working on it. And here's why. So part of the codependent nature of what I grew up with in my family of origin, and then what culture does to women, is that I got into this space where I conflated being needed with love, right? So I feel like mostly in my childhood, what I learned or what I found was my currency was being helpful, or sometimes just like staying out of the way, which was helpful with, the chaos of my childhood. And so I started to believe that I had to kind of earn my keep. And all of this just, like people, 95% of what you do day to day is just habits. You're not having original thoughts. You're just getting up and going through the motions. And that's how the human neurology is actually built. So I'm realizing that has reared its little head for me in my midlife. And I'm working on establishing a better pattern in my friendships. And I thought today we could talk about that on the podcast, because I'm sure I'm not the only woman in midlife who's recognizing how her childhood traumas, little t, big T, does not matter, created habits, created patterns in relationships that don't really serve you anymore in your adulthood. So if this resonates for you, keep listening.
Welcome. You're listening to The Centered Midlife, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I have taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started.
Welcome back to The Centered Midlife. I'm Dr. Natalie, and I am here trying to demystify the emotional and psychological changes that are happening for women in midlife and help you really stand into your centered midlife, like really step into it, really stand firm in it. I really believe this is the best part of our life. I think from this point forward, we are making conscious choices to really choose us, put us front and center in a life after having had an entire lifetime of being programmed and conditioned by family, culture, society, whatever you want to call it, religion, that we should put ourselves second, third, fourth, that service forward is really what we should be doing. And unfortunately, that is an institutional teaching of codependency, right? And I know that pop culture has told us a lot about codependency. Maybe you've read some of Melody Beattie stuff, and so you know it from the alcoholics and Al-Anon kind of literature. But my guess is you mostly know it from Instagram Reels or whatever they call them, videos. So if that's you, that's fine. But I want to help you kind of understand one of the layers of what happens in this service forward. Selflessness is the way to be, and what, not just the way to be, like it's a social currency for women, although it is. It's really like we're taught if you're not that you should feel guilty about it, that you're somehow an awful selfish person. You know, it pits woman against woman, and you know it has happened in your lifetime, right? Like across your life, I am sure you've learned to caretake in whatever spheres that you're in, work, family, whatever. And, you know, some of us that had that experience in childhood and became, well, what we would call probably the parentified daughter, where you were another adult in the household kind of taking care of things, is that underneath the what is learned in that is this belief that you have to perform in order to earn your keep in relationships. And that set point of I need to be needed in order to have people love me is really going to mess you up when you hit midlife. I want to show you something. I found this picture the other day. So if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, you see a little picture of baby Natalie. I don't know. I must be like, I would say 6 to 9 months old. I had a ton of hair. I remember that. I was the one baby that had a ton of hair, which I don't have a ton of now because I'm losing it just like the rest of you. But I wanted to bring this up today for one reason. And I want to kind of pick apart something, because last week we were talking about some of these patterns that are not serving us and stepping out of them and really choosing yourself. Great. But I wanted to speak more to the why that's underneath it, and why then the waters are much more muddy as to why you found yourself in those relationships. Like, you know, the good news is you participated in your own suffering. And the bad news is you participated in your own suffering. Like the patterns are such that we're doing something that pulls us in to those types of relationships, as much as the people who also know how to do the other side of the dance are the ones that we find out in the world, in the wild, to create relationships with. So I don't want you to punish yourself. I really want you to understand how absolutely ingenious it is for a baby child's mind. This is why I showed you this cute little picture. For a little person, like she's super little, but even younger versions of me, like 8-year-old me, probably a little younger, 6-year-old me, we're already learning this idea that, oh, I get love and attention that's positive that I want when I'm useful. And what that will translate neurologically into our brain is a hardwired value belief system, whatever you want to call it, that tells me I have to be needed in order to earn love. And love and needing me like just became crosswired. End of story. No shame, no blame. I don't need to feel guilty about this, right? And in midlife, as your estrogen is going down, what is happening is that your tolerance level, your stress tolerance level is also going down, right? The ovaries are not producing that estrogen. The adrenal glands are taking that over. The adrenal glands are also in charge of our stress hormones. Ergo, it is one of many reasons why our stress tolerance levels go down. We also, estrogen is kind of a key that opens a lot of other neurotransmitters that help us to manage lots and lots of stress. Makes sense evolutionarily that women who are raising the kids are going to have these really high tolerance levels for a lot of chaos around them. However, it set us up, and culture kind of set us up together to be in this swirl of doing for others, earning our keep, feeling good about ourselves because we're doing that, until our estrogen starts to go down. And then we start to get more resentful. So one of the things that in the codependency literature, if you're aware, is that kind of I need to be needed to be loved cycle creates resentment in the codependent. The codependent sometimes, the shadow side of codependency is they feel like they're in the right. They're the ones that are doing the caretaking. They know better. They're telling the people, if you would stop acting a fool and do the thing that I told you to do, life would be quite more simple. I was this person. I am this person. I catch this all the time. It's not my favorite thing. And to be honest, I feel bad for all of us as women because we were put into that position. Like the super mom, wife, career woman, So like my mom was a first generation in the boomers, like coming out in the 70s, getting their rights, going to work, doing the things, right? But it took until the end of the 70s before women could even own their own properties, have their own bank accounts, whatever. Crazy. 1970s, not 1870s, 1970s. It's not even 50 years since some of that stuff started to shift. Those women would have stayed in marriages, whether or not they wanted to or not in midlife, because fiscally, they'd have been out on their ass. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like the reason my parents separated, got together again, was my dad legitimately said he would take the three youngest children, myself, my younger brother and sister, and my mom would be SOL. And she would have been, because she could get a job. And by that time in the 80s, she could get a checking account, but she was never going to make what he made because they graduated in college in the 60s. So that was 20 years that he had ahead of her to build a career. She was going to barely, be able to buy milk, much less stand up in court and say that she could sustainably take care of these three kids. So she was petrified and went back, right? Like, I totally get it. And then the crazy that my two siblings, the three of us, saw, really, it devastated our framework for relationships. I think that, I was 10 when they did that separation, but there was a lot of this like bubbling in around my age of 8, 9. My daughter was talking to me about this the other day too. And she's like, well, like, what were your older siblings doing? And I'm like, well, one of them left for junior military college and made my parents sign that he could go at age 17. So, I'll tell you what, we all got out of that house as toot sweet fast as we possibly could. So, all this to say, I want you to put into context kind of the layering of why women do what they do when they do it, historically, as well as what's happening for us presently. There does seem to be kind of this unprecedented. You can go into Spotify, go into Apple Podcasts, look for midlife podcasts, and there's a ton of them, right? Were we talking about this at that level? We didn't even have podcasts back then, but would you be able to find articles in the 80s and 90s about this? Yes. As many? No. Not at all. So there is an unprecedented way in which we're stepping into this. But, to go backwards, younger versions of me who learned to hustle for my worth and conflated need with love, understandably so, because I was witnessing that was a survival mode for my mom. That's all it was. Like there were no other options for her. There might have been a little bit later, but definitely not in the mid 80s when they separated the first time. It was late 90s by the time late 90s when they separated again, because it was after I had graduated high school. Anyway, all to say, I want you to put into perspective and not feel shame about why you do what you do. I'm giving you my story to help you understand how I look at it from this lens. I'm holding that baby picture. I look at it from the lens of a very small person did this brilliant thing emotionally and psychologically and learned how to function in dysfunction. That's really what it is, how to function in dysfunction. The sad thing is, then that becomes my blueprint, like the scaffolding on which other things are built that I walk into my adulthood with. Or I should say, ran into my adulthood, because I was not unlike my older two siblings. Got out of that house, went to college, did not want to come back, did not want to be in that environment anymore. So college for me was an escape from my family of origin more than it was a direction in which I was like running towards. It was just one of the methods that I knew that I could get out because I was smart. So I'm like, okay, we'll use that capital. This is what we're going to do. But I was going to leave no matter what. So it would have been on my wits or whatever else, that I had available to me. So I am not going to shame myself, nor am I shaming you. And I want you to stop shaming yourself if you have these patterns. It was never about you trying to be some awful person or being so stupid and naive that you picked up bad patterns. It was never about that. Actually, it's quite the opposite. As a psychologist, one of the reasons I even went into this field is it is fascinating to me what a brain and nervous system will do to adapt in situations where no one has any business emotionally and psychologically surviving it. Nobody has any business going through that amount of abuse or neglect. And yet they are like fascinating people. But some of these patterns rise up in midlife. And the reason for that, the reason they're bubbling to the surface is because that resiliency factor that was built in our neurochemicals comes down. That armor comes down when the estrogen goes down. No shame, right? And whatever version of how you are helping navigate that in perimenopause, I strongly encourage you to keep navigating, keep going to your providers. Is it a patch? Is it hormone replacement? Is it some sort of psychotropic medication? Whatever it is for you, keep it up because you're not crazy, right? The irritability is higher. The incapacity to tolerate any of it is higher. The divorce rates are higher, right? Because that shadow side of always feeling like you were right, always feeling like you needed to control everything. And if people would just follow through, like it would be okay. That codependent nature of being needed and caretaking everybody else will build resentment when you're not drugged out by estrogen anymore. That's the reality. As that veil comes down, then you start to see what you're doing. Now, if you don't have awareness that you are as much a participant in that as everyone else around you, you can blame shift it, right? And this is not, again, anything that you need to feel guilt or shame about. You will see the spouse and go, well, this person used me for 25 years and I'm kind of done with that. And they may have, right? Like I have, go and talk to a therapist, find somebody like me if you need to figure and tease that out. They may have, and they may have had a relational pattern that fit with your needing to be needed and needing to caretake in order to feel loved. So what may have happened is you two souls in the wild found one another and have perpetuated this cycle, and it will not work for you. So I think I am not a couples therapist, and I know some really great ones that I've, been in consultation groups with and been able to talk to, and they have a really great way of navigating this with couples. But in midlife, what will happen for many of us as women is that childhood trauma, those patterns, relational patterns, maybe it's not, big T trauma, but it's some sort of pattern that is not serving you, that is showing up in your relationships that you need to change because you're not going to be able to tolerate it anymore, means that you're propositioning your relationships in such a way that you are going to be a different person. So the person that you're in relationship to can stay in that relationship with you. No problem at all. If they choose to stay in a relationship with the newer version of you. Old story. I was drugged out on my estrogen and tolerated far too much. And this relational pattern that I had, not great. New pattern, I'm not going to do that anymore. But that makes me new to you, right? That makes how I'm interacting with you new. All to come back to this conversation I was having with my daughter about I'm not doing this really great, am I? Because I was surprised, honestly, with who she thought was like, who are my besties? I mean, it just surprised me, I guess. I'll have to dig that one out a little bit more because I'm sure there's more there and we can talk about it on the podcast. But I also just thought to myself, I'm still using that scaffolding. I'm still using the blueprint of I need to be needed to be loved subtly. And the reason I know that to be true is I don't invest much in my relationships unless I have a lot of excess energy, which is really not happening in midlife. So all to say, probably not calling people enough, probably not going out enough, not nurturing those relationships enough. And even when like something comes up, I had a friend just buy a really, really cute convertible, and she texted and was like, I'd love to take you out on, summer evening ride. And the first thing that came up for me is, I don't want to do this. I don't even, like, I was like, what? Who is saying this? Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because that blueprint is you need to be needed to be loved. And so relationships, therefore, for me, become an energy suck. Like any interaction, somehow the map tells me I have to have a certain amount of energy capital to give to it. And I had been doing stuff all day long for the house, obviously. If you're still watching me, you see that I have not picked my paint swatch yet, but I will eventually. Yeah, so I like that was the initial that came up for me. And I was like, that's interesting. And this conversation with my daughter, this is interesting. So there is still some residual stuff there that I'm going to have to start to become self-aware about. I don't know if you know, but I still, on my website, learntoloveyourstory.com, have my online courses up. And those online courses, one of them is on self-awareness. It is actually the first in the series. And the reason for that is because I know as a psychologist, without self-awareness, there is no next step of changing anything. If you don't know you're doing something, there is no changing doing it, right? But self-awareness has to be closely chased by self-compassion, because if it's not, then you're going to beat yourself up. And so what you've watched me do on the podcast today is I come back to this cute little face of my baby self. And I think, well, in the 70s and 80s, what was she going through, right? Like, what was she witnessing? What was her world, and what was she being taught? How can I be mad at this cute little baby face? I can't be mad at her. I've definitely learned to beat older me up. I'm wicked good at beating older me up. Do not like that I do that, but my inner mean girl, she loves a whip, right? So I can do that pretty easily, but I'm not so inclined to do that to younger versions of me. And so I really like keep pictures up and around of me young, because I need to set that straight. Like, no shame. There is no shame that I found this pattern that attracted me in relationships where I felt the most comfortable when they needed me more than I needed them. So I am at my last podcast, I have recognized that pattern. I certainly have seen some relationships atrophy as a result of that, but I'm not mad at myself that I found myself there. I'm not mad at them that they found themselves there. They are great people. And I wish that I truly love and wish them well. I know it doesn't work for me anymore. So the deal is, now if you want to have a relationship with me, it'll look different. And if it doesn't look different, then it probably will atrophy. That's the difference, right? But I'm still a part of that too. Like, I got checked by my 11-year-old. Like, I'm not investing in these relationships that I think these are the really important ones. And I'm probably not investing enough in them, but it has a lot to do with that unsaid rule inside my brain that says need equals love, but need right now in perimenopause is just exhausting. And I don't want to be needed anymore. I don't have it to give. So until I rewrite that story, I will not, do the investing in relationships in the way that I need to, right? That's what I had to unpack. Now, here is my disclaimer as I end the podcast. If any of this has resonated for you, pinged a little bit, and you have never explored these themes before, I strongly recommend you find yourself a really good therapist. If you're in Minnesota, I have a very small private practice. You can look me up, but I strongly suggest that you uncover some of this, because it is not a mistake. I will link one of my earlier podcasts that talked about the SWAN study. It's not a mistake that women in perimenopause have trauma coming up. It's known that our depression is higher, our anxiety is higher, and the linkage here is the estrogen stores go down, or the estrogen goes down, our tolerance level depletes, changes, I would say transitions into, we went from superhuman into normal human emotional capacity. So superhuman while we were in childbearing years, and normal capacity when we go through perimenopause and then menopause and beyond. And we need to learn how to navigate this differently, because we do not have the resources chemically, neurochemically, that we did when we were in those childbearing years. So we got to switch it, or it's going to beat us up. It's going to kill us over time. It's going to take years off your life, like emotionally, psychologically, and physically. if you don't reckon with these things. So if any part of this podcast today tingled just a little and you've never explored some of these patterns, I would strongly encourage you. Now is the time. Now is the time to unpack that. It's one of the ways that you will step into your centered midlife, where you will own it. You need to uncover through self-awareness and self-compassion what these things are in order to make different choices for yourself moving forward so that you can have a centered midlife.
Because I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, I have to make sure at the end of each of these episodes that I give you the disclaimer that none of the material that I talk about in these podcasts is meant to replace any kind of therapy or formal medical or mental health treatment. And in fact, anything that I offer on my website, my coaching programs, any kind of psychoeducational materials that I release are not a replacement for that level of care. So just take that into account when you listen. This is information for you, and hopefully you find it of value, both as an educational tool and for your entertainment. And I also want to mention that if anyone you know is in a mental health crisis, needs additional help, I always include these two crisis resources. They're available to anybody. Pick up the phone and dial 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And you can always visit their website at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Additionally, there's actually a crisis text line. So if you're not somebody that likes to pick up the phone, text HOME, home, to 741-741 to the crisis text line. And you can find them online at crisistextline.org. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and I hope that you like and follow me wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe consider leaving me a review. It always helps me to keep this podcast relevant when I know what you want to hear about.